Hello, members. Tom Morrison here from the Nashville office of the Metal Treating Institute. We are so excited to see you today. We're going to be hitting home with the world of energy with Dan Forgacs today from APPI Energy. They're our longtime MTI official provider of energy services. So before we get into that, we've got three huge things that are happening right now at MTI. One, we just came off our spring meeting in Naples, Florida, and oh my gosh, the surveys have been off the charts. We had Joe Theismann, Super Bowl winning quarterback, as our featured keynote. We talked about some great industry topics, including workforce development. And we raised $35,000 for the Foundation for Education Foundation, the Scholarship Fund, which is so awesome. And that leads fast forwarding to our 90th anniversary. Can you believe this? MTI was founded in 1933 in Detroit, Michigan, in a hotel with 30 heat treaters. And we're now 90 years later. We still have 4 of those companies as members, and they're going to all be at the MTI fall meeting in Tucson, Arizona at the El Conquistador Resort from October 9th to 11th. Great stuff. You want to put it on your calendar, October 9th to 11th at the El Conquistador Resort in Tucson, Arizona. It's going to be a phenomenal celebration of MTI members across the world. And then we have on May 31st, we have our next MTI sales presented by Forecast by ITR Economics. They're going to show you hopefully some good news, but 24 is looking pretty down, but we're going to see some news and what to expect in the coming 1, 2, and 3 years. 25 is supposed to be a nice recap year, but you will not want to miss May 31st and get the sales forecast and get the latest stuff. The report's already out there, but they'll be presenting the numbers behind the numbers on May 31st. We'll be sending out the RSVP this week for that webcast. And then MTI at the spring board meeting last week approved the most progressive workforce development strategy MTI has ever had in its history, called Jobs of Tomorrow. We're partnering with a group called Worker BTV to develop video assets with a job board that's going to go out. It's going to be on Amazon Prime to reach eyeballs we've never seen before, but it's going to give you, the member, some great digital assets in your local community to send to your high schools, your technical schools, your colleges, anybody. Have your workers spread it to their friends to tell the story of what is heat treating, why is it so awesome, what's its impact on society, and the most important thing, the jobs and careers that are available to you as a worker in this great industry. So lots of big things happening at MTI to tackle the number one thing that bothers every single member, and that's workforce development. So just be on the lookout for that invite for that webcast coming probably in the next 2 weeks. So today we have Dan Forgacs from APPI Energy, longtime energy provider for MTI members. Dan, say hello to everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Tom. Congratulations on your guys' anniversary. And I didn't know you were founded in Detroit, Michigan, but I am phoning in today from Michigan. So awesome. Thanks for having us here today.
I know I don't look 90 years old, but I try and fake it, you know. Hey, Dan, so the world of energy, lots of stuff going on in there. So tell us, to get this, the last time we spoke was August of 2022 when you were on this show to tell members about things happening. And it wasn't good news back then, but I'm thinking you said in our prep call for this that you might have some good news. So what is going on in the markets between August of last year and today, and what are we looking at in the future?
Yeah, great point. And again, thank you to you, Tom, and thanks for everyone for joining in today. So we were a little bit gloom and doom back in 2022. We were kind of just reporting the status of the energy industry at that time, and it was really a wild ride. All of 22 was probably the most volatile energy markets that we've seen in our 26-year history. Prices were just really through the roof. In fact, if you'll bear with me, Tom, I'm going to share a quick chart that kind of gives you a recap of 22, but then kind of fast forwards to some better information to what we're seeing currently. And I'm just going to go ahead and share this real quick. And Tom, if you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing that.
Good, we can see it all.
Great. Okay, so what we really see here is a chart of two things. The orange line is natural gas pricing for the country. The national benchmark is at Henry Hub in Louisiana. That's the orange line. You see the real volatility there. The other thing I'd call your attention to is the blue line. That's a proprietary chart from APPI. What we do is we take all the offers that competitive suppliers are putting into the market every day in the deregulated states, and we track those. We don't claim to have a crystal ball, but we can look at trends. We can look at drivers of what's driving the market up, what's driving the market down. And what I call your attention to here, Tom, is really, again, the strong correlation between natural gas prices and electricity prices. What we often say is where gas goes, electricity follows. So where you see gas trending down, you see power trending down as well. This was Winter Storm Uri in Texas back a couple winters ago, but only about a 3-4 day spike of cold weather in Texas and mid-continent, but really had an impact on natural gas prices. But then really this upward trend that continued really coming out of COVID, really peaked in middle of 22. But really, if you look at this peak here being really the bulk of 2022, again, some very volatile prices, very high prices. When we talked back in August, Tom, things were probably right in this area.
Right.
But some good news in that prices for both commodities have really come off. In fact, what we had is, not surprisingly, a lot of producers, the E&P, exploration and production companies, obviously wanted to get in on some of those higher prices. So they rushed back into the fields, created really what we now see as a short-term glut of natural gas here in the country. And it really goes back to, we didn't have much of a winter. Again, I'm talking to you from Michigan today. I think I fired up the old snowblower 2 times last winter, Tom. We really just didn't have sustained cold or below average cold. Really not much of a winter here, not much of a winter in Europe as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as to how natural gas in particular has really become a global commodity. So if we fast forward to where things are today, we're seeing natural gas in the short term. This is prompt month for really, so delivery for next month. Prices are pretty much down to really pretty much what we saw in the depths of COVID,
Right.
down to $2.50 range. Power prices have come down as well. There's a lot more factors on electricity than just the cost of generation. That's where it's tied to natural gas. So we haven't seen it drop quite as far, but certainly in the short term, a lot better news than we had for you guys back in August for both commodities, Tom, for both electricity and natural gas.
Well, you
One
said the
thing
magic.
before I stop sharing here is I would call folks' attention to, I often refer to prompt month, meaning next month, or near term, meaning in the next 3 to 6 months. You start to look further out of that, really, especially for delivery beyond 2024.
Right.
You see the market is really kind of settled in on this $4 to $4.50 gas. I think that's really what they think is a fair value. So the good news, the good news is in the short term, you might not be a bad idea to hedge if you have the option for those members that are in deregulated states for natural gas. Not a bad time to be a gas buyer, at least layer in some of these lower prices. As you get further out, you're certainly seeing higher prices come. And again, we'll talk about some of the factors driving that up. But I think that's kind of a good recap of where the markets have been over the last, since our last webinar.
Well, that's a nice big drop for prices, man. That looks like a ski slope I've skied before, coming off the mountain. But, you said the magic word, winter is over, which I'm so excited about. Passed out painting a long fence on Sunday on 89-degree heat. So I'm so glad that the winter is behind us and gas prices are going down as well. So let's talk about the next 6, 12, 24 months horizon. I mean, what do we look like? What does the future look like? I mean, I know you said you could probably pick up and hedge some bets now, but what is the future looking like in the next 24 months?
Yeah, well, let me go throw another eye chart at you here, Tom, and we'll start with what the government thinks is going to happen and what the market is really saying. So here we see the short-term energy outlook. The government puts this out every month. It's from the Energy Information Administration. Again, with this chart here, looking back 5 years, very similar to the other chart where we looked at historical over the last 5 years for spot prices. But what I'd call folks' attention to is we're pretty much right here, where the STEO, short-term energy outlook, what they see is kind of a slow but sustained increase over the remainder of this year and through 2024. That's the blue line there. The market also thinks pretty similar. We're down here in the low $2.25 range, but by next winter we'll probably be up around $4. That's just kind of a typical seasonal bump there. Come off a little bit in the next spring, but continue a slow but steady climb. When we see both the government, the EIA, and the NYMEX, the market in pretty close parallel to each other, it's usually a pretty strong indicator.
Pretty
So
good
is it
comp.
going to go back up to $12? Not, or $10? Not likely. But is it going to drop further into the $1.50? Probably not. And that's something that the government also puts on, and they call this their confidence bands. They're 95% sure gas is not going to get above $10 next winter, but they're also 95% sure it's not going to get much below $2. So, again, no one has the crystal ball. We don't, the market doesn't. This is where they're currently projecting. But we often say, Tom, this is kind of your upside risk. This is your downside benefit. So for people who are saying, boy, I think it's going to keep falling, it might, they might prove to be right. We think, again, not a bad idea to take some of that risk off the table if you have that as an option. Lock in some of these lower power prices or natural gas prices, power prices as well. And even if you approach it on kind of almost a dollar cost averaging approach, I want to layer in.
Yeah.
You're gonna, you won't get the lowest lows, but you won't get the highest highs as well. So that kind of gives you a little bit, at least where the government and where the market is predicting things through the end of 24.
So let's back up a little bit and talk about energy policy. I mean, when you look at the U.S. government, there is so big of a push in regulators, especially from the Biden administration, to really almost do away with natural gas. Because me and one of the gentlemen in our membership, Michael Moiso from Mary Steele, had a conversation with a gentleman from NAM's Energy, can't remember his name, but NAM's Energy director, and he was sharing with us just what's going on under the thermal gas element, where they're trying to do all these things for, taking natural gas out of homes and ovens and stoves and those kind of things. So in the world of energy policy, the uphill battles we seem to be fighting, what is APPI Energy's view of some of the stuff that's going on?
Well, the first thing I'd point out is absolutely, you're right. It is largely at the federal level, but very important to remember, a lot of energy decisions and a lot of energy impact, regulatory impact, happens at the state or local level. So I often say, regardless of who's in the White House, states are doing things, on their own, over and above what the federal government is doing. Case in point, just last week, New York, kind of what you were talking about. Yeah. New York came out, basically banned natural gas hookups in new construction. California has flirted with some very similar things. Massachusetts as well. So you're right. There's absolutely a move away from fossil fuels as a whole. A lot of folks say, "Oh yeah, fossil fuels, that's coal." Well, natural gas, that's a fossil fuel too. That does emit carbon. So when you look to carbon-free emissions, then it's a broader scope here. So natural gas is certainly under attack. Coal plants also are under attack, so that's kind of also at the federal level here. Just last week, the EPA came out with another restriction. For this one, really was one of the first really attacking carbon dioxide emissions on existing power plants. They've had a number of regulations for new plants, but this one is really pretty much all coal plants have to pretty much cut or capture all their carbon emissions by 2038 or be forced to retire. That's an expensive proposition. Right. We're already seeing that have an impact. Even before that EPA ruling came out, for your members, Tom, in Pennsylvania, it's called Homer City Generation. Yep. Was the largest coal-fired power plant in the Commonwealth. Announced plans they'll be shut down by June or July of this year, probably June. And then taking that a little bit further, not so much from a pricing standpoint, but from a reliability standpoint, so many of these power plants and natural gas-fired options are under pressure. That both FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and NERC, North American Electric Reliability Council, both have come out in the last 2 weeks saying, this is, and I don't use the word crisis very easily, but I'm using their word. Yeah. This is a pending reliability crisis. Right. That we've got coal-fired plants, natural gas plants under tremendous pressure. Renewables are coming. We'll get there, but it's going to be a rocky road. Renewables are just not ready for prime time. They're coming, but it's going to be a rocky road. And when there's a rocky road, implies risk. the way that utilities and suppliers deal with risk is they put risk premiums on there. And case in point, I'm going to go back to New York, really where our conversation started. We're seeing some extremely high prices and risk premiums put in because suppliers and utilities don't necessarily know where things are going, but it
Right.
looks like it's going to be more restrictive. And what they do know when these laws come out, again, back to New York, this peaker plant rule, I won't bore your folks with too much of that, but a lot of these plants are going to shut down because it just doesn't, they really can't compete from a pricing standpoint, and they certainly can't compete from a compliance standpoint.
You know, when I hear all that, I think of two things when I hear natural gas and coal being pushed out the window. I think of the grill masters. I mean, think of all the people that grill with natural gas and fire coal, you know? And
yeah,
what the next thing I think about is George Foreman's probably listening going, I'm going to expand my capacity on my grill shops and make my George Foreman electric grills the thing. You know,
right.
I mean, that's the reality of what it sounds like we could be headed to, where, you know.
What people sometimes think, you know, I'll go to electric vehicles for a minute. Oh, hey, you just plug it in, right? You know, you don't fill it up at the pump. Well, where does that power come from? You know,
when 6 million people plug in at the same time, power grid goes down. No one thinks about late for work, missing your vacation.
Great point.
Stuck at an electric Shell station for 3 hours while you're waiting to get, I mean, we still haven't figured out the unintended consequences that are going to take place when all this, and it's going to be an uproar when it happens. So
absolutely. And Tom, real quick, again, back to the reliability, the grid is not ready for that.
Right.
We've got aging infrastructure. Again, we're not going to be gloom and doom here today, but we've got aging infrastructure that is in need of upgrades. And then you've got all this, you know, impending load. Electric vehicles be a good example, or you sometimes hear the electrification of everything, right? That's more demand. And then you have renewables. And what we often say is, you know, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, but even where it does, that's probably not where the people are, right? So wind in West Texas blows really strong.
Yeah.
Not a lot of folks live there.
Right.
So you got to move it. That's transmission. But who wants those big lines, you know, running across their property, or who wants gas pipelines, you know, running across their farm field? Hard to find places to you know, to be able to move the energy.
I've seen them wind farms. They don't look pretty.
No. right.
So you mentioned renewable energy sources. So talk about some of the renewable energy sources and how are those continuing to develop?
Sure. Well, one of the biggest things, again, this is a good news story here, is the Inflation Reduction Act. On its surface, you say, well, they're fighting inflation, but what's key in there is there's a lot of increased or new incentives around renewables. In a perfect world, you could have about 70% of your project paid for through rebates. Now that's stacking every possible rebate on top of each other.
Right.
Most folks are not going to qualify for that. Sure. But the base credit is about 30%. So if it's, you know, $1 million, you're going to get 30% of that back. If you use domestic content, and that's still being decided what that is. The IRS just came out with some rulings as to what that will look like, what domestic content really means. But that could be another 10%. If you're in an economic development community, that could be another 10 to 20%. So if you stack all these things together, it makes renewables a lot more cost effective. So that's a big development that's really been really starting to take effect since our last webinar. Just read something just before the call, Tom. There's a bipartisan agreement in the Senate to boost hydropower. That's still a good old-fashioned renewable. Not a lot of folks like dams necessarily, but they like cheap power, and they like power that doesn't emit carbon. So dams and pumped water storage. The Senate is working on something to improve that a little bit. Well, a lot of hydroelectric dams in the country are coming up for relicensing. Right. So they're scrambling to try to keep those online. So there's a few things that are happening. Without a doubt, I don't think I have an eye chart for you on that, but you know, if you looked at the country's what they call the generation stack, you'll see coal plummeting down, nukes are pretty flat, But renewables, boy, that's a hockey stick of of how much power is generated from renewables. But
Right.
good old natural gas is still about 40% of the country's generation. So we're going to have that around for a while.
Well, dams aren't so bad because people pay money to go actually look at the Hoover Dam. That's like a tourist attraction. But no one pays any money to go see any windmill farm. None.
That's a good point.
You drive through it.
Tom, I'll just do a side note. I'm split decision because I like, salmon and all these things that have the run of the river, but below dams are some great trout waters. So for any fly fishermen out there, you can say, well, it's a mixed bag there. We want more salmon, but boy, we like the trout rivers too below dams. So
absolutely. So talk to us about supply drilling, new supply channels coming on. I mean, then you say like LNG or something has got some new stuff happening. What's going on with drilling?
Yeah, LNG will start there, liquefied natural gas. Again, going back to some of a large part of the volatility last year was due to Ukraine and what's going on with Russia there. Prior to the invasion of Ukraine, Europe got about 40% of their natural gas from Russia. Germany got about 50%. Most folks these days don't want to have Russia as a trading partner, but they very dependent on gas. So where they look to it was the U.S. in particular, not just the U.S., but the U.S. in particular. We have just even at some of the prices we saw last year, we have some of the cheapest natural gas in the whole world. We're blessed with that, an abundant supply of it. About 20% of the gas, though, that we pull out of the ground, we send overseas. That might be about 6% through pipelines to Mexico, but the remaining 13 or 14%, if you cool down natural gas far enough, it turns back into a liquid, very stable, very condensed. I can put it on a tanker ship. And what we were saying probably on our August webinar is, why would I sell it if I'm a producer in a true free market? Why would I sell it in the US for $6 or $8?
Right.
If I could get it to Europe, I could get $60 or $70 for that same gas. If I could get it to Asia, I'd get 50 or 60. So there was a real strong demand for things. So not surprisingly, those LNG terminals don't happen overnight, but 2 more will come online at the end of 24. Probably another 4 are in the pipeline for probably 25, 26. So this is not going away, Tom. We're going to continue to be an exporter. We are. The U.S. is now the world's largest natural gas exporter. I don't see that happening, going away anytime soon. Likewise, though, to the U.S., Europe didn't have much of a winter. So, and then, as we saw here, all these producers were attracted to those high prices. So now Europe's got actually a glut. The winter really wasn't that bad for them, not only from the weather standpoint, but also just the availability of gas. You may remember even there was a time on the news where tankers were lined up off the coast, waiting for prices to go back up. Why sell it today if I can hold on for a week or two? I can maybe sell it at a higher price later. So as of right now, Europe's storage is about 60% of capacity. So they're in pretty good shape for next winter. The real wild cards, though, are the reopening of Asia and where the economy is going to go for Asia, because again, that's global commodity. What the summer will be here and in Europe, and then what next winter starts to be. And I think for those European buyers who are saying, boy, I think it'll be another year where not much of a winter and we really won't have competition from Asia, that might be a dangerous proposition to bank on the weather and Asia's economy, or China in particular, staying subdued. So again, global commodity, what happens overseas very much is helping, is affecting us here. And by extension, electricity, power prices pretty much follow suit with gas as well.
So what about you mentioned foreign capacity, foreign impact of demand? I mean, do we expect that to continue to be a rising thing? Will foreign demand really have an impact on our ability to get energy and the pricing?
I think it will. I really do. Again, when I mentioned, 20% of our gas goes overseas, that's only 7 LNG terminals operating currently. There's twice that in the pipeline. They won't all get built. They won't all get financed. But
They're all going to, they're going to get, what does though is going to get used.
What does is going to, they're well said, well said. And again, the current administration has really doubled down on their commitment to continue to supply natural gas to Europe. I don't think we'll see any reduction in that. And those terminals really for all of 22, you may or may not remember there was actually a fire and an explosion at the largest, second largest LNG terminal in June of last year. That stayed offline. Really, it's really only been by March that they were back to full production. That was 2 BCF a day, 2 billion cubic feet a day. We pull about 100 billion cubic feet a day out of the ground every day.
Right.
We send 20% of it overseas, but just that one terminal, Freeport, was 2 BCF a day. Just by that being closed, that alone kept a lot more gas here domestically, but they're back to full power now. We're shipping out as much as we can. Again, in the short term, Europe's in pretty good shape. Where they are in the next, 6-12 months, where Asia is really going to be the thing. But LNG is not going away, and I think we'll continue to ship more overseas over time.
But is liquid natural gas, is that what the Biden administration, they're trying to shut, at least in America, replace with renewables? That's a trick question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I heard the government's committed to getting natural gas to the European market. And about 10 minutes ago, we said that they're trying to replace all that renewables in the United States.
It's a good point. And I said we are stuck with natural gas for a while. Right. So I think natural gas. Well,
Biden even said we're going to have it for about a decade. We still have that. So yeah. It's just funny how we're pushing it to one or two countries, but we're trying to nix it here in America, which is kind of ironic.
Yeah, I think 2035 is their goal for a carbon-free power sector.
Right.
We'll see if we get there. It's going to be expensive if we do.
So I'm an MTI member. I'm trying to decide, what do I do in this current marketplace? So what are some pricing strategies, some methodologies they should be thinking about with pricing, given where we're at right now, where we think we're going to go in the next 24 months? What should they be looking to do to effectively minimize their costs for their quotes?
Well, obviously, your members are nationwide, Tom. So there's some folks who don't have a lot of options in terms of competitive supply. About 15 states are deregulated for their electricity market. That means you can use competition to drive those costs down or manage those costs and hopefully avoid some of this risk. About 25 states are open for natural gas switching. So for your members in a regulated state, about the best you can do is look at efficiency measures, right? Can I use less gas? Can I use less electricity? There are demand response programs in a number of those states that basically will pay you to curtail your electricity. So there may be some options there, even in a regulated state, where you can reduce some of your energy. From the utility standpoint, it's cheaper to pay you to use less than it is to build a new power plant. So I certainly encourage folks to take a look at any programs like that if they have the option. We work with a lot of plastics manufacturers, and when we talk demand response, they say, no, I can't do that. I've got liquid plastic in my pipes. I can't shut down for an hour or two on a hot day. It'd take me forever and I'd lose all this product. So I realize not everybody has that ability to curtail usage or move it to your off-peak. Moving it to off-peak, though, for those, again, that have an option to move production around, if you have the ability to run nights and weekends, that's cheaper power anywhere in the country than it is during the day. So, again, is that an easy thing to get a first shifter to come in at 3 in the morning? Probably, maybe not, but that might be something to at least look for you. Again, before I switch to deregulated markets, what we often say is just take a look at your utility invoice. In particular, yes, kWh, kilowatt hours, your usage is important, but look at your kW as well. That's your demand. That's the peak that you're pulling through the grid at any given time. A simple example, Tom, but if you come in and flip on every machine or flip on every burner or whatever, whatever your process is, if you flip them all on at the same time, that sets a very high peak demand.
Right.
In most markets, demand is unfortunately a gift that keeps giving, because the utility says, hey, if you could use that much power at any given time, I need to be ready for you to use it all the time, right?
Right.
So I need to build in your peak demand into my pricing structure. I need to be ready for that. That's
Sure.
true with competitive suppliers as well. And that really demand, that KW number, affects the supply side of your bill and the distribution side. And anything you can do to reduce that number is going to pay dividends every month going forward on both sides of the bill.
What about data, anything to do with data management or technologies that are coming through that members should be thinking about implementing into their energy flow?
Yep, that's another great one. Again, I'll go back to demand. If you can see really, or your usage as well. If you can see which machine, your machinery, which ones are really the big energy hogs. Obviously, anything you can do to be more efficient on those is something that's going to benefit you. For those that have multiple facilities, sometimes the idea of benchmarking and weather normalizing, taking the weather out of it and maybe getting down to energy per square foot at this facility versus this facility. That's something you can, just by identifying, you can start to say, okay, boy, here's where my problem is. I'm going to take some active measures to try to reduce that.
Right.
I mentioned the idea of demand response time and peak alerts or peak demand. Again, by having a baseline of where, energy is something that, certainly how much you use affects your price, but also how you use it.
Right.
When you use. Do you set this peak demand? Do you use primarily on peak power? Those things are all things that the more information you have through a data management program, you can start to see, okay, do I have options to reduce, to move, to lower those peaks? All those things will pay off dividends pretty quickly as well.
So let's round the corner here and talk about how is APPI helping members minimize their energy costs? Because I really believe that it is so tough to recruit employees and to keep the current employees happy and to keep your customers happy. A great salesperson said to me one time that your customer is always someone else's prospect. And with poachers really trying to get employees these days, I think owners and chief executives need to be working with their employees and their customers more than ever, instead of sitting in front of a computer trying to watch the markets and buy right. I know a lot of people like to do that, but I think what you offer is an opportunity for you to be an extension of their team and to manage that cost for them. So I don't know how many people really understand the services and the level of commitment y'all have to MTI members when they come to you. So if I'm a heat treater, I'm like, you know what? I think I want to maybe explore this path with APPI Energy and let them manage my energy costs so I can spend more time with my employees and my customers, make sure they're happy, because that's the big challenge. Energy is a cost, but it's not a huge one compared to losing employees and not having good customers. So how easy is it to work with APPI Energy, and what's the process you go through that someone would want to look at doing business?
Sure. I appreciate that. You took one of my lines right out of my mouth. We want to be an extension of your team. We know folks, MTI members, are wearing a lot of hats, are pulled in a lot of directions. But we live, eat, and breathe this stuff all day. As a company, we run about 400 RFPs, requests for pricing, every month. So we like to say we've really got our finger on the pulse of the market and can kind of identify these trends, but really ultimately help your members make well-educated buying decisions. Again, we don't make any decisions for them. We're going to present the pros and cons. We're going to cast a wide net, look at multiple procurement strategies, but we try to do all the heavy lifting for your members. If folks are interested in, giving us 15 to 20 minutes that we can get to know you a little bit, your goals, your risk tolerances, your company strategies, are you taking efficiency measures? Get to know us, or get to know you 15, 20 minutes, give us a copy of your bill. Ideally, let us go to the utility and retrieve a year's worth of your usage history. No upfront cost, no obligation to do that for MTI members. If we can't prove to you that it makes sense to accept one of our solutions, we shake hands as friends and say, hey, we'll keep you posted if things change, if we can be of any service. But sometimes just the idea, Tom, of a fresh set of eyes of looking at something, and the beauty of competition. I'm biased to deregulated energy markets. I've been in it almost 20 years now. But competition does wonderful things in getting people to not be complacent. Oftentimes we find incumbents get complacent.
Right.
I'm going to get that business. They're going to renew. They always renew. I'm going to call, we do a 3-year contract. I'm going to call them in, 2.5 years. They're just going to roll over. I can get my margins a little better. And what we find, and I've been on the supplier end and on the consulting end, competition removes complacency and
Right.
sharpens pencils. So just to get a free set of eyes, or another set of eyes on it. Again, if we can't prove to you something makes sense, no harm, no foul. You've got the best game in town. But yeah, that's really all we would need. Right. Again, 15, 20 minutes up front. We'll go to work for you, run a competitive RFP among multiple top tier suppliers. In about a week, come back to your members with, hey, here's the results. Here's our recommendation. Here's what's driving the market up. Here's what's driving it down. As much as folks want to get into the weeds of the market stuff, I got a lot more eye charts I could bore your members with, Tom, but we try to keep it really on, what there's, again, meeting their goals, their strategy, try to do a lot of that work and ultimately come back with a recommendation that hopefully aligns with their goals.
And it costs them no extra money to do that, correct?
Absolutely. No upfront cost, no obligation.
Awesome.
And I say upfront. Let me. I don't.
Oh yeah, they got to pay their energy costs. They got to pay the normal.
Absolutely. And Tom, I just, we don't shy away from this. Folks say, well, how do you get paid? Right? Because we're never going to send them an invoice. We're never going to have them sign a contract. We put a small fee on the usage, and we'll disclose that. We have no problem with that for our work. So yeah, but people pay that to the supplier, who ultimately remits almost, you'd call it almost like a finder's fee, if you will, to us to bring customers to the suppliers. Ultimately, it brings your members to hopefully even some suppliers that they aren't even aware of, but that are very competitive in their area, and that changes all the time.
I don't know if it's still true today, but I know one of your counterparts at APPI shared with me, and we challenged our members: go to your current marketing agent who buys your energy for you and ask them, how much do you get paid in the process? And he's like, a lot of them don't want to tell you because it's built in and buried into the contract, and not everybody knows how much they're charged.
Yeah. No, and we're pretty transparent about that. And 1 to 4/10 of a penny, I'll call it, is our typical on the electricity side. Maybe 5 to 10 cents a decatherm on the natural gas side. We don't shy away from those conversations. We're happy to justify the work that we do. But again, if we can't prove to you that, even including our fee, a lot of folks say, oh, well, I can cut out the middleman, right? Well, maybe, but if you go to 3 suppliers or you sign the wrong term, not to mention that supplier has a representative, which is what I used to do when I worked for the supplier. Their goal is to maximize their margins. So folks say, oh, well, I'm going to cut you out. It overlooks the benefit of competition. When 10, 15, 20 suppliers are competing for your business on the same terms and conditions the same day, they're going to get aggressive. And that's what we hope to do.
So we've talked about everything under the sun: energy policy, renewables, past, present, future, usage, data, anything else you can think of as we close here that you'd want to share with MTI members as we look to hopefully have you back in another 8 months. But what do they need to do between here and any other final thoughts?
Love to. Again, Tom, feel free to share my contact information, as you were kind enough to let me know. We had a couple of our consultants down at your meeting last week. Sounds like they behaved themselves, so that's a good sign.
They live.
But feel free to just reach out to me. Again, if you want to share my contact information, Tom, or Pete, or I think it's Brandon, who are our dedicated MTI consultants. But again, with a simple email back and forth, a little bit of information, we can go out, take a look at the usage, see what we can do for you. The other thing I'd encourage your members to do, we have a no-cost monthly newsletter called The Advisor. If you send me an email, I'd be happy to sign you up for it. You can go to our website, appienergy.com. You can sign up there. Just a brief, 1-2 page, what's going on in the market, some just different facts and figures, just to kind of keep people up to speed on what's going on, we've got that newsletter available for MTI members as well. If I can be of any assistance or point folks in the right direction, certainly more than happy to do that.
Awesome. Dan, thanks for being with us today. So members, listen, you can go to APPI Energy.com and sign up for their newsletter if you want to get it directly from them. MTI does receive that, and we put articles in periodically to keep you abreast of the energy markets. Look, it doesn't cost you anything. This video is going to be posted out this afternoon, and APPI Energy's key contact for MTI will be in there if you want to send them your energy bill and take a look at for free of charge, just to say, hey, how can they help me? And if it makes sense, you got a choice. If not, then you just keep doing what you're doing because it's successful for you. But in closing, I want to remind you of the 3 big things to be thinking about. Put October 9th through the 11th on your calendar for MTI's 90th anniversary in Tucson, Arizona. You're going to want to be there. The content will be off the charts and will hit the target of things that you need to improve your business. The next quarterly sales forecast coming up with ITR is May 31st at 1:30 Eastern time. You want to look for that invite and put that on your calendar. And then the jobs of tomorrow, look for that webcast coming out where we're going to show you and unveil this aggressive workforce development plan that we have to help you drive the next generation of workers to your business. We're here for you. Our goal is your success. MTI members, have a great day, because you're not just strong, you're MTI strong. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone.